It is pitiful when men hold on to false hopes. A great man must live in honor or die an honorable death. That is all I have to say.
No one will ever say that what you just said was spoken by anyone other than you, Ajax. Your words were true to your heart and spirit, but just for a moment, release your thoughts and listen to what those who love you have to say.
Lord Ajax, there is nothing worse in this world for men than the necessity of fate. I came from a wealthy family. My father was the richest man in Phrygia. Now I am a slave. The gods willed that you would win me with your strength, and I have accepted my destiny of sharing your bed, and have come with time to love you very much. And so I beg you, by our home and by the bed we share, do not let me suffer at the hands of your enemies. Do not turn me over to the men whom you hate. For on the day you die, moments after your death, your son and I will be snatched up violently by the Greeks and treated like slaves. One of my new masters will sneer at me and say, look, there is that woman, the mistress of Ajax, the strongest warrior in the entire army. Can you actually believe that people used to envy her? She is nothing now but a common slave. That's what they'll say, and worse. And the pain of it will be my fate, and the shame of it will stain your family. Think about your father, whom you will be abandoning in the throes of old age, and your poor old mother who spends all her days praying that you will someday return home alive. And what about your son? Can you imagine how hard your death will be on him, growing up fatherless and without food on the table? Living with men who hate him for being your son. I have nowhere else to go. No one to whom to turn. My parents are dead. You destroyed my homeland. You now are my homeland. My safety, my life. Nothing else matters but you. I ask you to remember all the good times we had, and to treat me kindly. For a noble man always remembers those who gave him pleasure and protects them from danger.
I hope you will pity this woman and welcome her words as we do.
I will welcome her when she has done as she's been told.
My dear Ajax, I shall always do as you say.
Then bring me my son, my boy, so I can see him.
Forgive me, sir. I hid him in fear.
Were you afraid he would see his father covered in blood?
I was afraid he would lose his life if you laid eyes on him.
I suppose that was right, given the state I was in.
I tried my best to keep him out of harm's way.
I approve of your actions. You showed great foresight.
Oh, my sweet Ajax. What can I do to make things better between us?
Let me see my boy. Let me speak to him man to man.
He is guarded nearby.
Why am I made to wait for him?
Eurysakes, your father calls you. It's all right. There's nothing to fear.
Lift him up to me. That's right, lift him up right here. He won't be afraid of freshly spilled blood, not my boy. A father must expose his son to things like this, toughen him up, mold his nature. My dear boy, may you have better luck than your father, but come to resemble him in all other ways, especially bravery. I envy you, son. Your hands slip around in the blood, and yet they are clean. Ignorance is bliss. Before you know pleasure and pain, but when you grow up, your enemies will see your father in your actions. Until then, I want you to enjoy being a boy. Play in the warm breeze. Make your mother smile. None of the Greeks will insult you or mistreat you. Though you will be fatherless, I will leave you to the care of my half-brother, Teucer, to raise you to be a man. He isn't afraid to hunt his enemies, even if he's never around when I need him the most. You loyal sailors who fought alongside me with your thick shields to hold back our enemies, on the battle lines, you will now report to Teucer. Stand by him as he brings my boy to see my father, Telamon, and my mother, Erebora. so he may look after them as they slowly decline into the darkness below. And hear this clearly. No man shall ever touch my arms or win them in a contest after I am done.
What am I to do now? Which of you will lift him? Where is Teucer? He should be here now to help prepare the body for a proper burial. We don't have much time. Oh, Ajax, this was no way to die, not for you. Even your enemies will weep when they see you.
The man of many turns now mocks our suffering. He's laughing at us, along with the general.
Let him laugh. Let them all laugh. They won't laugh for long when they lack his shield in combat. Evil men only appreciate good men like Ajax after they're gone. His death is as bitter to me as it is sweet to them, and pleasant for him, for he died according to his wishes. They have no reason to claim victory over him, for it was a god who took his life, not them. Let Odysseus curse his name and hurl hard words. Ajax won't hear them. He is gone, far away from here. He knows neither their laughter nor my loud moans.
End of scene 2. That's the end of our dramatic presentation for this evening. Thank you very much. To come up and take their place at the table where the actors just were. And then before we get started with our discussion, I just want to briefly mention a couple of quick things. One is that this is not where the play Ajax ends. We end with his death because we want to get to the discussion. But here's what happens, just briefly what happens after he takes his own life in the play. Minutes after his wife finds him, his brother arrives, the one he's been calling out for all this time. And his brother Teucer beats himself up in front of Ajax's soldiers, and he says in the Greek, "Where can I show my face? Among what men? When I was not where you needed me, when you needed me the most." And many of our military audiences have said that that sounds like survivor's guilt to them, which seems to be an experience that cuts across many life experiences where trauma is involved. But I'm not sure survivor's guilt carries the full weight of what it would be like to lose a brother this way. And then fast forward to the end of the play, the 4-star general Agamemnon, he arrives, and he says of Ajax's body that's been left above the earth and on stage the second half of the play, "Leave that man's body to rot above the earth. He will receive no honor in his death. He shall be fed to the dogs." In the final seconds of the play, Odysseus, the very man who won the honor of Achilles' armor with his wit and his rhetoric, he comes back and he defends Ajax's body. He says in the Greek, "I'm moved by admiration for his greatness rather than hatred for his smallness." Many of our friends become our enemies. I don't see friends and enemies as mutually exclusive. He tries to convince the general to allow Ajax to be buried. The general's not interested in what he has to say, and the general walks away. And the play ends with a funeral procession. Not the high honors that Ajax would have received had his life not taken this violent and precipitous turn, but a burial nonetheless that honored his humanity and his sacrifice and his family. And I mention this ending because 2,500 years later, we as a culture, broadly, we are still struggling with the same issues left at the end of this play. How do we honor the accomplishments and sacrifices of great men and women like Ajax, who sacrificed not only their physical, but sometimes their mental health in service of their country or service of something larger than themselves, without honoring the violence that sometimes takes place at the end of their lives? How do we balance those needs? We'll come back to that in our discussion. Before we do, we're going to turn things over to our panel. And before we turn things over to our panel, Tony and I are going to plant the first seed, the first question we're going to ask you as an audience. We recognize that it's a weekend